Okay, we're now broadcasting live. So welcome everyone. This is the Book Talk Nation chat with Diana Gabaldon. As you'll see, this works a little bit like an author event in a bookstore. So Diana is going to talk about her latest book, Written in My Own Heart's Blood. If you have not already purchased that book, which was just released, you can do that right here on this page. You'll see right next to this video window, there's a little like widget where you can type in your name. You can get it signed and personalized in your name, those copies by Diana. She will be signing and personalizing those books until tomorrow night. So if you want to order a book, you want to make sure you get that order in by tomorrow at midnight Eastern time. And then a local indie bookstore, Changing Hands, will be fulfilling all those orders and shipping them right to your door, so it supports the local indie bookstores. As you'll see also, there's a chat box underneath this video window, which I see a lot of you have already found, and you're chatting away. In about 15 minutes, we'll start pulling questions from that chat box for Diana, and she'll answer them live. She'll also answer some questions that you submitted ahead of time when you RSVP'd for the event. So we'll pick a few of those and have her answer those in about 15 minutes. Until then, I'm going to turn it over to our interviewer tonight, who is Karen Hold. Karen Hold is a freelance writer and editor who reviews books for The Oprah Magazine, Parade, and other publications. So a big welcome to Diana and to Karen, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Diana Gabaldon is the #1 New York Times best-selling author of the wildly popular Outlander novels, as well as a best-selling series featuring Lord John Grey, a character she introduced in the Outlander novel Voyager. She has also written a graphic novel, The Exile, and one work of nonfiction, The Outlandish Companion. She joins us today, as Jennifer said, to talk about Book 8 in the Outlander series, Written in My Own Heart's Blood. So welcome, Diana.
Thank you, Karen. Nice to be here.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I know we have a lot of people tuning in today to talk with you, and I think they're all very excited about the book, obviously. And, you know, this book, like the entire series, is so complex and has so many elements of different genres and interlocking characters and plot points. If you had to boil it down to just one sentence, how would you describe what this book is about?
Well, my UK editor, having read a large chunk of it, said, I think you just pulled off the literary equivalent of juggling half a dozen chainsaws.
That is high praise.
Yeah, no, I was very pleased to hear that. Yeah, no.
It also sounds dangerous.
Well, it takes a little skill, you know.
Yeah. Absolutely. So this series debuted in, what, 1991? Is that right?
And that's right.
So 23 years, 8 books, thousands of pages. Yes. And I mean, I know from the lead up to this book coming out that everyone was so excited and frankly a little impatient for this book to come out. What do you attribute the longevity to? And the popularity of this series?
Well, if you ask any particular person, they'll have their own favorite things. You know, some people are really into the history. They like to learn things and be educated as they read. A lot of them are just into the adventure. They like, you know, violence and sex and love stories and ships sinking and you know, plague and all kinds of other interesting things. There's plenty of that, certainly. Some people are into the medicine, the botanical medicine and Claire's medical adventures. But what it all comes down to in the end for everybody is that it's the characters. They perceive these as real people whom they like and are interested in, and they just want to see what happened next.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the characters, I mean, I know that recently you got to go see the screening of the series the new television series based on the book series. So what was it like for you to see, especially Claire and James, after they had been living in your head for so long? What was it like for you to actually see them as imagined by someone else?
Well, it was not that much of a shock, I might say. The production team had in fact sent me the audition tapes for Sam Heughan when he was cast as Jamie, and I was a little dubious about this because I was thinking, as they all did, well, this is going to be an impossible task. How can you find someone to play Jamie Fraser? And so they called while I was driving with my husband from Phoenix to Santa Fe, and they said, oh, we're so excited we found Jamie, and he was the first one cast. I was saying, you're kidding, really? Who is he? And they said, well, it's no one you've ever heard of before. You know, he's a fairly obscure actor so far. They said, but we're sending you the audition tapes. I said, great. You know, I can't see them till tonight when I get to where my computer is. But as we drove, I was Googling Sam Heughan on my iPhone, and I was saying, you're kidding. I said, this guy looks bizarre. You know, he looks grotesque. Sam is a very chameleonic actor. He looks totally different in every part he's ever had. And frankly, his IMDb photos don't do him any favors. But I was in some trepidation when I got there, and I was thinking, geez, you know. So anyway, I geared up my computer, up comes the tapes, and I'm sort of going like that. And, you know, 5 seconds in, I'm thinking he doesn't look anything like these pictures. He looks fine. And then 5 seconds later, he's gone. And it's just Jamie Fraser right there. And I'm like, wow. I was just amazed. I didn't think anyone could do that. And he did, you know. He just walked right into the part and became Jamie, you know. He's wearing, you know, a T-shirt, and his hair is dark. He's actually a blonde, but he dyes it all the time. And right now, he's a very vivid and interesting redhead. But I was thinking, cool, you know, this is great. And pretty much the same thing happened when I saw the auditions for Katrina. Those were done jointly with Sam. They were playing off each other, and I was thinking, yeah. So I was thrilled. And, you know, these were people who were not in costume, not made up. It was just the sheer magic of acting. They're both just, you know, terrific. And the rest of the production is equally good. Now, if you add in the spectacular photography of Scotland, the beautiful sets, and the gorgeous costumes, just fabulous stuff, you really got something.
Yeah. Well, that's terrific. And I know, as I said, I know that you went to the screening, and you had kind of your Hollywood experience, and you were asked the questions, and you were a VIP. So, how is the world of Hollywood different from the world of publishing?
Well, from my point of view, it's not really. People just ask you questions all the time, and you smile and answer the same ones over and over and over.
So you didn't have your head turned by the glamour of it?
No. I've been in this business a long time. No, I mean, it was intensely interesting. I'd never been to an LA screening before. I was very impressed that in the theater that they'd rigged up for the screenings, it was on one of the sound stages on the Sony lot. And so they had, you know, sort of stadium seating, but with very broad platforms. And what they had for people to sit on was these immense, luxurious sofas, you know, festooned with pillows and water bottles. And at the end of the first day, when I said I wanted to stay and actually watch the screening of the first episode, because I hadn't seen it with its proper score and music before, and they said, oh, great, let me get you a blanket. And they went out and gone. They had these little fuzzy blankets for everyone because the theater was cold, so you could sit there in complete comfort with your water bottle and your cushion. I was thinking, yeah, this is how theaters ought to be. That was the most impressive part of it, yeah.
Oh, very nice. So the book's been out for 1 week.
Yes.
Have you been surprised at all by the reaction?
No. I mean, I've been very gratified by the reaction. But, you know, I have been doing this for 23 years, and the books have gotten increasingly visible, as publishers like to say, with each title, which is natural for a growing series. So I'm really, really pleased that so many people were enthusiastic about this book, and given what I've read online, everybody seems to be enthusiastic after reading the book, which is also a good thing.
Well, I mean, it has gotten more and more visible to the point where, I mean, people were talking about this as the most anticipated book of 2014. I mean, I think I read that so many places. People were, now that it's out, I mean, do you feel a sense of relief? I mean, or was there any, I mean, is there any fear before such a highly anticipated book comes out?
No. It does take me quite a long time to write one of these books. It's very intense toward the end. I call it the final frenzy because my books grow organically. I don't write with an outline. I don't write in a straight line. I put them together, jigsaw puzzle-like. And so to fit something with 8 major storylines is kind of a feat. And it is very intense. The last 2 months, you know, everything gets pushed out of the way. It's me and the book. That's all there is to it. And so it's like being plugged into the electricity. You know, it's just flowing through you. And there is nothing else. It's paradoxically very calm. But at the same time, I'm not eating or sleeping much. That last 2 days, I hardly slept at all. I finished the book at 6 in the morning after having worked all day and the night before. And so there is this sense of deep accomplishment. You know, it's like you built this vast edifice and you finally get to put, you know, the last brick in it. And you're going, Yeah, so yeah, and that's an incomparable feeling. So after that, you're not bothered by anything.
When you're done, do you know that it's good?
I do, yeah. I mean, I'm 62 years old. I've been reading most of my life. I know a good book when I see it.
I've also read that you do a lot of your work in the middle of the night. Is that
I
right?
do, yeah. Yeah,
Do you think that affects your writing at all? The fact that you are writing at night when everyone's asleep. I mean, does that make your imagination work differently, or do you think that shows up in your work at all?
well, it means that there's a lot less distraction. The phone doesn't ring. People are not running up to my office every 5 minutes needing something. And, there's no psychic noise in the middle of the night. That's very important. So it kind of lets me, walk across whatever membrane it is between here and where the story is. So it's a little easier to concentrate on what I'm doing. But in fact, I can write anywhere, including airports. I've done that many times.
So if you have to, you're pretty good at just
Oh, yeah.
sort of getting rid of the distractions and just focusing.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, when I'm writing, I'm not wherever I am. I'm in the book.
Really? Wow. So I also saw that you had recently been at a writers conference and had taught a session on how to write and how not to write good sex scenes.
Yes.
So for those of us who weren't there, could you give us some of the tips that you shared for how to write a good sex scene
I
and
can.
and what not to do?
I can, yes, as a matter of fact. Yeah, the important thing to bear in mind is that a sex scene is not actually about sex. And a number of beginning writers, you should pardon the term, screw up when they come to this because they do think that. It's not possible to talk about sex scenes without making double entendres right and left, so I'm not even going to try to avoid it. But yeah, no, what a good sex scene is about the exchange of emotion and not bodily fluids. And so what you should do, just as a vague blueprint, is write it as a dialogue scene. What emotion is being talked about here? What are these people doing? A good sex scene is basically a dialogue scene with physical cues that anchor you where you are. And it's those physical cues that you want to watch out for in the do not do this section. As in, you want to sort of avoid aggressively descriptive language, I suppose. For instance, if you need to have a scene where your male character is licking the heroine's nipples or something like that, do not say he laved her tender pink crests with his tongue. I mean, just don't. Yeah, some of them are so oblique that you can't tell what's going on, and most of them are so overt that you don't want to know what's going on. You want to keep it somewhere in the middle. Give enough description that you know what's going on, but you don't need a lot because you can go on the assumption that your audience does know how it's done.
Right. So in the years since you have started this series, and as we said at the beginning, I mean, your books they're not easy to classify, and from the beginning they've crossed all these genres and had so many different elements. Do you find that in the years since you started this series that readers and booksellers and reviewers have they become more, I guess, more open to that sort of mixing than they were when you first started?
Oh, much more, yes. And with regard to my books, it's just by default. They've seen them in so many different places, they just threw up their hands. But since I wrote Outlander, and I can't say that I was responsible for it, but it has happened that there is much more genre bending going on than there used to be. You're getting paranormal romances and, the suspense with the supernatural elements and, and science fiction mysteries and all kinds of things like that. And that, I think, is not so much my influence, but the influence of Amazon.com and other electronic booksellers, because you're no longer limited to where your book goes on the shelf. It used to be that it had to go on a specific shelf in the bookstore. Those shelves had labels. Ergo, it was really, really hard to have a book that crossed those genres. But now, you type a title and Amazon says, well, this is, historical fiction, adventure, romance, mystery, science fiction, fantasy,
Right.
Gay and lesbian fiction, horror, and military history. Those are all things I've seen my books sold as. Yeah, really. In fact, I once won a Quill Award in a category called science fiction, fantasy, and horror, for which I beat both George R.R. Martin and Stephen King.
That's nice. I mean,
That was
that's got to
good.
make you feel good, right?
Oh, yes.
Well, I know there are a lot of people who are dying to jump in with a question.
Great.
So before I turn it over, though, I just have to ask you. There's going to be a book 9, right?
Yes, there is.
Yes. And have you already started working on it?
Well, I finished writing Moby. That's what I call it, written in my own heart's blood for short. It's my own heart's blood, Mohb, Moby. Also, it's big and white. But anyway, I finished writing that on April 15th. I spent the next
Oh,
2 weeks doing the copy edit and the proofreading for it simultaneously. And then I spent May tending to everything that I'd been pushing out of the way for the last 4 months. So, no.
okay. Well, I don't want to rush you, but I know that they all are dying for you to be done with book 9. So, just so you know, they're all going to be in a big hurry.
They
And I
can
am
be
now
less.
going to, I am now going to turn it over to Jennifer because I know there are a lot of people who would like to ask their own questions.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Karen. Nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Yes, there are. So let's see. Can you guys hear me? Good?
I can, yes.
Good. Okay, excellent. So we do have a lot of reader questions. We
Great.
don't have much time, but we'll get to as many of them as we can.
You bet.
Karen jumped right to the one that is obviously the most popular, that everyone wants to know when the next book is coming and what the title is and all that. But we will jump to the others that we have coming in. So let's see. It's from Christelle. Diana, I know you've said you hear your characters. Do you also smell, feel, etc.? And I imagine you must write them with such keen description. You must have to write them with such keen description.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay, and let's see here. Which character's head is the hardest to get into when you're creating dialogue, and why?
It depends a little bit on the situation and how familiar I am with the characters. Brianna has been, one of the more difficult, but in this particular book, she wasn't a problem at all.
Okay. This is from Karen. Is Jamie the first character who spoke to you when you started writing Outlander? And what is the first scene you wrote?
Yes, he was, because the only thing I knew about the book was that it had men in kilts, or a man in a kilt, and it was him. Of course, the first scene I wrote is only about a half page, and it doesn't actually appear in Outlander. It was just to get words on the page. And it was a scene between my anonymous man in a kilt, he didn't even have a name at that point, who was having an argument with his sister while she chopped vegetables.
Very interesting. Let's see here. Let's keep flying through these here. This is from Karen in San Diego. Do you enjoy doing other things with your hands besides typing on a keyboard? Perhaps knitting, gardening, playing an instrument?
Well, actually, all three of those, yeah.
There you go. Let's see. From Cindy, Diana in the end with, this is probably a spoiler because it's saying in the end here, with Jamie and Claire, will the readers breathe a sigh of relief? We all want Jamie and Claire to have a happy ending.
Yes, this book does, in fact, have what could be classified as a happy ending.
Good. I'm sure they'll all be glad to hear that if they haven't already read it, because I'm sure some of them have already peeled right through the book since it came out last week.
Well, there's also these annoying people who read the ending first, which I disapprove of entirely.
From Lori, if you could live in another time or place, where and when would that be?
I really wouldn't. I'm perfectly happy living here. And also I have a husband whom I've had for the last 42 years. I'm not going anywhere without him.
Yeah. From Thelma, will there be any more in-betweeny novellas?
Yeah, I'm sure there will. Yeah, it takes a long time to construct one of the big books, both because they are very large, they're very complex, and because of the interior engineering needed, because it is part of a long series. You have to be able to make a book intelligible to someone who does not know this is the 8th book of a series. They buy it in an airport bookshop and think, oh, this is going to see me through to Cleveland. They'd better be able to enjoy it all the way to Cleveland, which means you need to pick up the backstory in bits and pieces in such a way that they can read it, but it won't bore the pants off people who've been with you for the last 4 million words.
Lisa Davies says, have you made any of the concoctions that Claire has made as a healer?
Peppermint tea would be about it.
Okay. Let's see, they're all flying in here. Let me find another one for you. This is from Connie. What was the most difficult and the most emotional section of Moby to write, and why?
Let me see. I'm not sure I can do it. It's probably Oh, probably the, well, in some ways, yes. Anyway, it's the chapter entitled Crackling of Thorns. But there were a couple of other, shorter pieces, and I can't tell you exactly where they were because I don't remember the chapter titles.
Let's see here. From Bernadette. You've mentioned in the past that all your characters represent some element of your personality. Have you ever been surprised by the development of a character's personality, and if so, which one?
No, I can't say I've been surprised at all. Occasionally I'm a little bemused, thinking, really. And, some of them I like a lot, like Lord John. He's been one of what I call a mushroom, one of the characters who just pops up and walks off with any scene he's in. And, I don't even have to think what he'd say next. I just know that.
And that leads me to my next question that popped up a couple times. This is from Kathy. She says, I recently heard you describe your characters as being either onions, mushrooms, or hard nuts. Can you speak about which characters fit each category and why?
Sure. Yeah, an onion is one of those characters whose essence I apprehend immediately. Jamie and Claire are both onions. I've known who they are, to their heart from the moment I worked with them. But they develop more layers as I work with them. They become more rounded and pungent, so they're onions. Mushroom, as I say, is someone who just pops up. I wasn't expecting them. They're just there, and they invariably walk off with any scene they're in. So Lord John is my most famous mushroom, but there are a lot of others, like Little Mr. Willoughby and Dragonfly and Amber, and Murphy the Sea Cook and Voyager. But they just pop up when they want to. A hard nut is someone whom I have because they're a necessary part of the plot, or they're a real historical person who needs to be there for historical reasons. And so these people sort of come with a certain number of pre-made requirements. It's not that I get to know them first as people, so I have to sort of feel my way into them, or conversely hammer on them until they crack open.
Very interesting way to describe it. Let's see, this is from Hillcrest Cook. If Jamie talked first, who talks the loudest?
It varies. You'd have to say it's Claire that she speaks the most, especially through the first book where she was the only narrator. But you'd have to say that Black Jack Randall sort of commands the most attention when he speaks.
And from Virginia Johnson, you mentioned earlier about juggling chainsaws. In that light, how are you juggling the TV show public appearances and those related to the new book?
One day at a time is all you can do.
A little bit at a time. Let's see. A lot more piling in here. You've mentioned, hold on, let's see. Your readers laugh and cry as they make their way through your stories. Mm-hmm. Are you, as you write these books, equally engaged? Do you cry when you write upsetting scenes or laugh out loud at the witty ones? And that's from Tamara.
I'd better be engaged or it's not going to be a very good book. Yes, of course.
From R. Tidwell, what is the most important thing you've learned about your craft of writing since Outlander?
Let's see. Hi, Mandy. It's basically faith. You have to have faith that whatever you have that's causing this, that's allowing you to tell stories, is going to keep coming. There's always this sort of hesitance where you feel like, oh, this is a really good thing. Maybe I should save it for the next book. And since the very beginning, I've always said, no, I'm going to use everything I've got, and just trust that there will be more. And that when I sit down to write tomorrow, I will still know how. Because every writer has had the experience of sitting down and thinking, well, I knew how to write yesterday, and today I don't, now what? And it's just a tightrope that you're always walking over the abyss of your own unconsciousness. You just set your foot on it and keep going.
And from Kim Brady, how do you remember the details of each character's history so that there are no inconsistencies?
How do you remember your own life or your husband's history? I mean, these are real people to me. Of course I remember them.
Gotcha. Let's see. How attached emotionally do you get to these characters, even the bad guys? Also, how is it seeing them come to life in the TV series? And that's from Kelly Flex.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I get very attached to them. In fact, I find it very devastating when one of them dies. As I tell people, I do not actually kill people, and I'm frequently surprised and horrified when they die, and very upset that this happens, as it does in real life. As for the TV show, it's fascinating, because it is recognizably Outlander. They're doing a lovely job with the adaptation. And anyone who has read the book would recognize the story. You'll see your favorite scenes and lines of dialogue and so forth. But it is an adaptation, which means, A, they can't fit everything in. They had to lose the Loch Ness Monster, alas. But they do fit in most of it. But in order to do that, it has an episodic arc. It's 16 episodes, which is a big season. But each episode has to have a little mini story arc. And to achieve that, sometimes they will move the scenes so they aren't in the same chronological order that they are in the book. And that, in turn, necessitates little emendations and additions and so forth, so that it does make sense where they are. And so that means watching it, you feel as though this is Outlander, all right, but there's that constant sense of novelty and discovery, and that there's these little things that weren't in the book, but that fit perfectly.
Excellent. Lots to look forward to there. From Robin, will you be relieved or sad when the last book is written, or both?
Just relieved, I think. I mean, I can always go back and write more novellas if I'm not through with these people or if I miss them. And, I don't necessarily have to write things to be with them. You just have to have me write things for you to be with them.
Yes. So we have a few more minutes, so I'm going to try to get through some more of these for you. Let's see here. You've already answered that. This is from Franny. What celebrity would you be most excited to meet?
I don't know. I can't really think of anybody. I was very excited to meet all of the actors and so forth that are in the TV show, and I have met them, and they're just great people. I really enjoy them, but outside that, I can't think. I've met a couple of presidents, and I met Mrs. Putin several years ago while she was still married to the president incumbent. I just am not all that impressed by celebrities.
And let's see. Carol Harding, do you already know where and how the series ends, or does it kind of grow as you're writing?
It always grows as I'm writing. I do have the very last scene because it bubbled up, about 15 years ago, and I wrote it down. But it's more in the nature of an epilogue than, the ending of the plot, so I can't actually tell you how we're getting there.
From Joanne, your chapters have such great names. When do you break the manuscript into chapters and choose the names?
That's actually the very last thing I do before I send a manuscript or a chunk of manuscript to my editors, because I write in scenes, as I say, and the scenes then gradually assemble. It's like playing Tetris in my head, but very slowly. And so all these shapes fit together, and that's all it is shapes. And gradually they grow up into large chunks, which I can kind of line up against the timeline I'm evolving in my head. And with luck, I can see the shape of the book at that point. But, it is a shape to me. It's not, chapter, 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 chapter. And so once the shape is assembled, or, a chunk of shape is assembled, then I can look at it and I can see naturally where the chapter breaks come. And at that point, I can title them. That's kind of the fun part, because all the work's done.
And let's see, from Kim, will you be doing any more cameos in the series?
I don't know. I haven't had the nerve to watch the first one yet, so we'll have to see how that goes. My husband was with me while we visited the set and so forth, so he saw it. And he said, it's fine. He said, you don't look anything like yourself. So with luck, no one will recognize me.
From Virginia, other than the main characters, is there any character you created that you said to yourself, oh, I really love this person? And if so, who was it?
Oh, all of them. Yeah, I just fell in love, right and left with almost everybody. You begin working with them, and suddenly, they're just real. They're right there.
This is from Marianne. I'm always looking for great books and authors. Who do you like?
Ooh, I like lots and lots and lots of people. As I say, I've been reading my whole life. If you go to my website, click on resources and then on the methadone list. And this is a list of people whose books I can, recommend wholeheartedly, and they're in every genre imaginable. But these are just ones that I specifically really like, and so you're bound to find something there that you like. Just most recently, I read Phil Rickman's most recent book, and he's one of my favorites. So it's always a great day when a new one is available.
Excellent recommendations. And from Sarah, can you speak all the languages you use in the book?
No. No, I speak Spanish, and I can read French and German because I learned in graduate school, but I have no grammar and no vocabulary. So I can, sort of approximate what I want to say, and then I ask an expert, how you would really say it. And fortunately, my German translator is very, very good, and she speaks Latin, so she can do that for me. But I have the help of 3 Gaelic experts to do the Gaelic for the book. And a good thing, too, because we get very sophisticated and excellent Gaelic as a result.
Excellent. Well, that brings us to the end of the chat. That brings us to the mark. So before we go, I want to remind everyone who's watching right now, who's joining us for this video, you can still order signed and personalized copies of Written in My Own Heart's Blood. Diana will be signing and personalizing in your name. Those are available right here on this page. You'll see a little widget to the side of the video window or at booktalknation.com. Those sales will close tomorrow night. So if you'd like a signed and personalized book, you're going to want to make sure you get it in by then. And then local indie store Changing Hands will ship those right to your door. So I want to thank everyone who joined us for all your questions that you submitted. Thank you to Karen for interviewing tonight, and a big thank you to Diana for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you.
It was my pleasure too. Thank you, Karen and Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you. And everybody have a great night. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.